and welcome back to my channel. So today I have another Sims 4 speed build for you, and I guess technically it's not the build, it is the interior of the build. So this is actually part 2 of a 2-part build. So the first part is already up on my channel if you want to check that out. I decided that I had wanted to replicate a dollhouse from the game. In particular, I decided to do the modern dollhouse. So that's what the exterior looks like, and that's what's modeled after. And then now I'm just basically going through and trying to decorate it. And as promised, my mom did help me actually decorate this house, except we only got through the first floor. So I did the rest of it on my own. This actually took a really long time to decorate. And funny story, there's actually 4 stories to this house. And I wasn't even paying attention to that. I actually thought there was only 3. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm almost done with the build. This is great. This has taken a while. Yeah, it turns out that there's a 4th floor. So then I had to add that in. But it turns out great. I mean, it still worked out. And there's a lot of really cool spaces in this home. And my idea was I kind of wanted this to be the home for like this really eccentric, like rich person. And what I decided to do was that this person is obsessed with the color blue. So on the outside of the build, which is part of the shell that is already up on the Sims 4 gallery, that I used a lot of navy out there. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to bring that inside, and you know what? This person is going to love the color blue. And in terms of the Sims 4 gallery, this is also already up on the gallery, so I have the shell and the full version, so that's totally up to you if you'd like to download either of those. And like I mentioned before, the shell does include the stuff in the backyard, and then the normal build has all of the interior already done. It is pretty pricey. This house, fully furnished, ended up being around 273,000 simoleons, which is, wow, that's a really expensive home. But I actually really like the way it came out. And I ended up putting this like gorgeous kitchen in. I did like this double fridge situation. I wish we just had like a large fridge in the game. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't have to do the double, which is why I did that, because I just wanted it to be really large and grand. And like they just spent a ton of money on this house. And I mean, I don't know, maybe this person doesn't even cook because I actually ended up putting a like butler's room in this home, which if you don't know, in The Sims 4, you can hire a butler for your home, but the catch is they do live there and you have to have a space for them. Like they have an assigned bed. So I don't usually include them because I don't usually have room for an extra bedroom. But for this home, since there was a lot of room, I did actually end up putting one in. So they have their own little suite actually all the way on the top floor. So they have to walk quite a ways, but it does exist. I did not include like a little kitchen. I had thought about it, but I decided I wouldn't because I didn't want it to be annoying for your Sims to like want to use that kitchen instead, especially if it is for the butler. And my suggestion would probably be to actually, there's a door that goes to the ladder that goes to that room. So I would probably lock that door except for everyone except for the butler. That way your Sims don't like go up there to like watch TV or something unless you particularly want to do that. Of course you can play however you want to, but that's like what I would do because my luck, my Sims would always want to go there instead of using the gorgeous giant living room they have downstairs. And then I ended up putting in this cute little like breakfast nook space. There's a ton of room in this house, so much space. And I really love the blue tiles, and since I thought this would be like kind of an eccentric sim, I decided that I wanted them to have a bunch of like patterns everywhere. Now, I don't think they clash. Like I didn't put like a ton in one space, but like every room has like a different pattern, all blue, of course, but I wanted it to be kind of different, very kind of like more artistic, if that makes sense. Like I ended up putting this really cool paneling on this wall. I tried to get some mirrors to fit in there and it just didn't want to work quite right. I cannot speak today, but I ended up putting the paneling on there and I actually just really liked the way it looked. I felt like it was a really nice statement piece, and I used these really cool lights all over the house. I used those, and I also used those like chandeliers with like a lot of the dangling pieces that I feel like I can never use because my builds aren't tall enough. Of course, unless I size them down. But for this home, when I built it, a lot of the floors are like full, like highest wall height possible, which I don't usually use, which lends itself to having room for those really large lamps, which is kind of nice. So I do utilize those kind of all over the place. And I will explain more too about the butler's like space upstairs once we actually get around to it. But I kind of kept this more simple. Like I feel like use as much clutter as I usually do, because I just felt like this was like a more cleaned space. Like they have enough room to store everything. I mean, look at all those cabinets. Like, I don't know if they'd really have much on their counters. And I was also having some move objects problems, like trying to delete things. So if you do download this off the gallery, be sure to use the move objects cheat on. And if something's missing, I'm sorry about that, but it was like being weird. I don't know if it's because there's so many floors, so it was kind of upset. And actually, in the middle of this like build, I did it in several sessions, like I said, because it took a while, and the Sims 4 did an update, and all of a sudden the game was lagging, so I actually had to down some of my settings so that I could actually record and hopefully not have it lag. So if you see any kind of change in a little while, that's why. Hopefully you can't really tell, especially like in build mode. I'm hoping that it kind of stays fine. But I did include this little half bath and this nice laundry area. I'm thinking also if you have a butler, like having someone do that. And interestingly enough, that shelf that I put on top of the washer and dryer, like, it's not blue, but because of the shadowing and I think sizing it up, it turned it blue, which worked out really, really well in this space. And I will say that I had like an issue with the washer being deleted. I don't know why. So that may be something that's missing. And of course, if you don't have laundry day, you can like gut that and use it for anything you want. I originally was going to use that whole space for a bathroom, but that was so big that I was like, this is kind of crazy. So I did end up making it also the laundry room, but I think that works out really well. And I really love the staircase being this really open, grand entrance. And I tried to line it up where the stairs are right in front of the door and that you could still see like straight out to the backyard because there was such a lovely view of that pool. And honestly, this lot is gorgeous. So this lot is actually the Chateau Pier, I think. And it's actually, oh no, Chateau Peak. It's right there, if I can read. Then it has like this huge like landscape of the city and of Del Sol Valley in particular. And I just like thought it was just such a gorgeous view for this kind of home. And this is actually the formal dining room that I'm working on. And I do go through a few renditions of the walls and wall coverings, and I actually found that rug and I was like, I have to use this rug. It was blue and it had this really cool pattern to it, and I don't think ever actually used that rug, which is actually what I really like about kind of sticking to a color, is that I feel like you get exposed to items that maybe you don't usually use. But I thought in this space, like they would have a bar for entertaining. I went through a bunch of different options, and again, just trying to figure out what I wanted the feel to be for this home. And then I decided that I wanted to put some cabinetry in. I think this room is so big, I think especially because the walls are so tall. But I do end up trying to put in some cabinetry. And for some reason, like the corner was upset with trying to put a cabinet in there. And I don't know why, but putting that counter in, it didn't like that. But I did end up using those taller pieces that are technically like the top cabinets for that kitchen set, and then just putting in some of those shelves for the bar area, and they light up and I think it looks really neat back there. And I do go through a bunch of different walls, but I do settle on something I actually really like that I hadn't tried before, so you'll see that in a second. And I definitely go through a few renditions of chairs, again just trying to really find like what I wanted this space to be like. But I think it did come together really well in the end. And there's just so much space. Like I can't even imagine, like I don't even think you can have this many Sims on a lot. Like, but there's enough chairs for basically the whole entire like game. They can all come over and all hang out. I do know there's like mods where you can have like basically as many Sims as you want. Although I think after a while it like breaks the game. I've seen videos of people adding like hundreds of people to a lot, and it just starts doing some really weird stuff, which is understandable given like you're supposed to have like, I don't know, like 8 or 12 or something on a lot. I can't remember how many people you can actually invite, but I do end up adding in a white wallpaper. Technically I think it's like stone, but I think what was happening was the walls were a little bit busy, and I think it was taking away from like the rest of the room. And you can see here I'm trying to figure out what do I want on this wall? Like, how do I decorate it? I tried like alternating colors, which, don't get me wrong, looked pretty cool, but I think it was just a little bit too much for this space, but I feel like I'd want to use that somewhere. And so I actually just use that stone everywhere, but I leave that paneling on the wall. But I do grab an object that is from, oh gosh, I think it was Eco Lifestyle. And it's like those, or no, it might be Island Living. Anyways, a wall piece you can see here, and just kind of stacking them. And I think that looks really neat. I've never done that before, but I think it gave it a really cool pattern without it being like overpowering, if that makes sense. And I wanted to make this like sunken conversation pit. And this space is so much larger than what it looks like. When I started putting furniture in it, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much room in here. Like, what am I going to do with all of this space? But I think it did work out really nicely. I ended up using like that sectional sofa, and I went through a bunch of different rugs, because what I was trying to do, because I was trying to make this like a really patterned house, was trying to figure out what kind of pattern I wanted to use and what would define that space, but that would also match like the rest of the space in this floor. And so I do end up finding something I like. I use a giant sectional sofa. I do basically like a really cool looking like built-in around the TV and fireplace, which I think will give it a really nice light. And it was interesting trying to get the lights to work properly, especially with like the sun coming in like it was. And so you can see I kind of change it around a lot to help me get a good picture of what those colors actually end up looking like. But this, like I said, took me a while with my mom. We spent a lot of time on this first floor, which is why I ended up finishing it on my own, because we just didn't have time to finish it while she was here. But we really enjoyed building it, and I'm actually excited to show her what the build actually ended up looking like. And so this is actually the sofa we do end up keeping here at the end, and I ended up using the fish tank coffee table. Hear me out. I've never used that before, and I feel like people talk badly about this object, but I think it looks really cool here. And I also think trying to fit that theme of like this kind of eccentric, like rich person who just kind of has these really cool pieces in their house. And I just feel like it really matched the space really well and filled in that area, if that makes sense. So I think that's really neat. I'm curious, since I've not really used it in live mode, if like the fish actually just swim around, or if you actually have to stock it like a fish tank. That I don't know. So that'll definitely be an experiment. And I don't remember what pack that actually comes with, but I think it does look pretty neat here. And I went back and forth about putting like some tables or something behind the couch, but I end up kind of leaving that space and then just adding in a plant over in the corner and just leaving that as a space like for your Sims, like they can walk around and all of that stuff. And I thought about using that area underneath those windows maybe as a bench or something, but I opted just to kind of leave it without that stuff on it, because I thought that would be kind of nice in this case. And again, like, because this is a platform, it was doing some interesting things when I was trying to put down those cabinets. It wasn't super thrilled about it, but like I said, I did put like these cabinets around the TV, and it definitely took me a minute to figure out what I wanted to put behind the TV, like in terms of lighting and kind of trying to set off that space. But I found these panels that I think worked really, really well. Like, they looked really neat. I did end up shifting them around because they were like glitching into each other very badly. So I moved them around just a little bit so that they don't do that, so that shouldn't be an issue. I do know if you use like the tool mod that you can also fix it with that too, but that isn't something that I use. And just trying to figure out what other lighting that I want to have in this space because of those tall ceilings. That definitely took me a minute. I tried to like intersect some different lamps and things like that, but I do end up, I believe, putting back like the light that I took out in the ceiling, or swapping it for that like circular one. I think I had the rectangular one earlier, but I figured this person would have all of these really cool like statement pieces and patterns around. And then I end up using these big like curtains that I think came with Dine Out, I believe. And I like the idea that maybe they're like remote controlled automated curtains that like you press a button and they'll like close over the windows, because there are a lot of windows in this home actually. The second floor I think is like nothing but windows. Like, I think the only like flat wall space I had for the most part was walls that I built internally in the home, because there were just so many windows, which I think actually was pretty cool. And the outside of the build, they're like this teal blue color. So I'm thinking maybe like it has some sort of like tint to it to where like people can't see in, that kind of thing. And that's what I'm going with, considering I had to fit bathrooms and all kinds of stuff in this house and you could otherwise be able to see in. But I'm thinking since they're on top of this huge hill and away from everybody else, and they probably have the money to make like really special windows that you can't see in, that is what I'm going with in terms of their story for this home. And then just leaving in this plant that I think adds a little nice like life to this space. And then I do end up actually squaring off this over the stairs to put in a really cool chandelier, which did make a really nice space for us a little bit later on. And this was definitely interesting, getting it to like work properly and do what I want, what I wanted it to do. But it did actually cooperate there at the end. And I also thought it might let a little bit of light down below, which would be nice. And then trying to figure out what this entranceway, I wanted it to be nice and simple. So I just put a rug and I combined like two like geometric looking tables with a vase on it. And kind of under the stairs, that did present somewhat of a difficult space for me because the game kept yelling at me. It didn't like me putting stuff under there. So I actually ended up making it this like coat rack area. And like where you know, like a mudroom kind of thing where you put your shoes and your jackets. And what I will say is I ended up putting in these cabinets, and when I went back into the build, it got mad and deleted the right half of those cabinets and would not let me place them again. Like it just wouldn't. Like nothing I did would fix it. So I'm not sure if possibly maybe the update did something, but anyways, when you see this on the gallery, you download it or in screenshots, that will be missing that right piece. But I do end up putting something in there. It just isn't those. I did try, I swear, but it just didn't want to cooperate, and I don't know why, since obviously I did it just now. And then just trying to create a space that, you know, where they could put on their shoes, take off their shoes, that kind of thing. But things did not want to fit right underneath the stairs because it was just upset about it. So I actually end up using the big mirror that I always use because it's just so wonderful and versatile, from the Island Living pack. And I end up putting it over there, like pretending like maybe it's like leaning up against the stairs or it's like a freestanding mirror. So I think that was really nice for the entranceway. You can like check out how you look before you leave the house, you know, that kind of thing. And I tried, like I said, a lot of different things, plants, chairs, seating arrangements, but I actually really liked having this out in the open. It definitely took it a second for me to actually be able to do it without it trying to clip to the wall, but that does stay. It's just that right side of the cabinet for some reason. And upstairs here, this was definitely interesting because of the way the dollhouse was built. This patio was raised slightly, so that means the door like clipped to the raised up portion outside, so I had to put like a little landing on it in order for that to work out properly. But I think it looked really nice there in the end. And you can see that I'm kind of messing around a little bit with this floor plan. And I decided that I feel like I do a lot of family homes and I do a lot of like kids rooms, but I actually ended up making this just a huge lavish master like suite along with just a guest room. So you, of course, if you download this, can make that into a kids room, but I just thought maybe this was just like a single rich person living their life and like they don't have kids, and that's just kind of what I envisioned here. But of course you can play however you would like to. And then I ended up putting like a tiny like open desk area over in the corner, and I think it actually was really nice and cozy. And you can see here that I'm putting ladders in to actually go up to the third floor. Well, I didn't know there was a fourth floor, so right now it's just the third floor. And I didn't want to use stairs because since I had to use that really tall wall height, it took up a lot of room to use stairs. So instead I used ladders, and then I just kind of cornered off those spaces and used those bookcase doors so that you could go in there and access the ladder, but that it's not like super obvious. I mean, I figured if you're rich enough to own this place, you can probably figure out how to do this too. And I ended up keeping that like landing area pretty open because I wanted you to be able to really enjoy the view of those front windows and everything. And I think it turned out really well. And I ended up just adding in like a rug over there with some ottomans and then just trying to keep that really simple. And I will say that in the master bedroom, I did swap out some of the windows. So technically the windows will be a little bit different between the shell and this build. And the reason I had to do that, which you'll see a little bit later, is because the platform that I had to use on the outside of the build in order to get the right like look to the dollhouse, it did this weird thing where if you put a window there, you can like see into the downstairs, and it was just odd. So I swapped out the windows for slightly shorter ones so that you don't have that weird like peekaboo into the downstairs, and it still looks right from the outside. But I did swap those out, so that is something to consider too. If you want to download the shell, that might happen, but you can easily swap them out for slightly shorter windows and they'll work really nicely there. But I thought this would be a nice just like small study area for guests or for your sim, because there is like an entertaining like studio thing upstairs. So I thought maybe this person did some sort of like maybe photography or video recording, YouTube, something. There are a lot of options. So I ended up putting this really cool office upstairs with photography equipment and that like video station and like a green screen and like some music equipment. So your Sims have a lot of options in terms of what they want to do in terms of how they got rich and famous, or maybe they just like inherited the money. I mean, that's also an option too. And I ended up putting in, because I didn't want to obstruct this view, I ended up just using those high school years like cabinets there. And I thought about trying to put pillows or something on top of them, but I think I ended up just putting a few plants over on the right side and then just kind of leaving it as it is and just really just letting you see out into the front yard since it was just so nice. And then I just filled in with a little bit of clutter here on the bottom and like just like books and magazines and just little things like that. And then I end up putting some lamps over there as well, but I figured this has some nice seating in the landing area. And then I do end up putting like a shelving unit over by the guest room as well, and by this like hidden bookcase, so maybe it doesn't look as obvious having that just kind of sitting on the wall. I did put in some sort of like organizer, and like I said, I did reuse a lot of the lights and things like that helped me keep it really nice and cohesive when I was doing this space. And I think I achieved that. I tried to use some like new interesting like shelving things, but I used this one, and I honestly don't know what pack this came from, but I think it looked really nice, especially with the like gray pulling that in from the bookcase. Felt like it kind of looked like it belonged. And then just adding a little piece of art there on the wall. I actually didn't use a ton of art in this home. I feel like I always use a lot of art, but this is actually the master or owner suite. And I ended up leaving it pretty spacious and putting like 2 different seating spaces in there because you have that lovely window there on the left. I figured you definitely need to have this like seating area over there so they can like look out and see their great view. And so I'm actually really looking forward to taking screenshots. I haven't done that yet, so I think it'll be really nice. And here you can see I'm like swapping out those windows, and you may have been able to see there for a second that you could like see down into the first floor, and I decided that wasn't really the look I was going for. But I did double check to try to make sure that it still looked right from the outside, and I think it did. And I think I just noticed that I did have a piece of stone wallpaper on the outside. Oh no. I can't remember if I fixed that or not. So I'm sorry if that's still there. I hate when it does that. Like you're doing the inside and all of a sudden it just does it on the outside for some reason. Really cool. But if you do run across those, you can just easily change that out. But I tried to actually use this really cool bed that came with high school years that has that blue pulled in and this really nice gold accent. And I figured since this was kind of a different space in its own like suite area that I would pull in a little bit of gold here, which worked really well for that really cool like geometric wallpaper that has the gold and white in it. So I definitely used that, and then just try to keep it more simple. I had those big cabinets there, but I ended up going with those smaller ones. And then I do end up up actually using that gold and white rug, which I don't think I've ever used before, but I do end up moving it over into the seating area near the window. You can see I was pulling out a bunch of chairs to see exactly what kind of look I was going for over in that space. But I think that was a nice, really cute, like reading nook that I created over there that your Sims could kind of hang out in. And I do end up putting a fireplace in this space as well, because I feel like, you know, they could come and curl up and have that really nice space to hang out after a long day of work with whatever they actually end up doing. Like I said, that'll be up to you in terms of what you actually get that sim to do. But I did end up using this hanging plant over there. I didn't use actually a ton of plants in this build, which again, I'm proud of myself because I use them a lot. And I do try to put one over in the corner, but it just didn't feel right. So you can see me trying that a little bit later on, but I do end up like not using it. And then putting in this really cool white and gold fireplace over here, and I actually end up pulling in some Get Famous stuff here as well, which I don't use very often because it is very bold and it doesn't usually match what I'm doing. And I end up putting some mirrors on this wall out of that I think it was Get Famous. That might be actually Vintage Glamour, about where that one came from, but to me those work really well together. Actually, if you were looking at packs, I think Vintage Glamour and Get Famous have a lot of overlap in terms of style, so I do pull some of that in here. And I do end up putting in that little room off to the right here is actually going to be a closet, so lots of space. So, and this huge built-in, I end up putting like the little stand from, I think it was Get Famous, in there, and a lot of cabinetry and some mirrors and like a really cool like outfit on the wall that was maybe from a movie or something. Again, maybe they do some sort of productions, things like that is what I'm thinking, and that's how they got their money. And then that space over there that's like nothing but windows is actually the bathroom. And I thought that was actually really neat because you have great views. Like if you were sitting and soaking in that gorgeous tub, like you can see out and look at the view. And same thing for the shower. I make it kind of like a custom like walk-in kind of shower where you just there's not a door or anything, you just go use it, which I thought was really nice. And I don't know why I always associate that with being just kind of fancy, but keeping it again kind of open and simple, and then adding in some cabinetry over here. And again, it was giving me a hard time. I think it's because of the platforms that I used outside. Like you can see, it just wouldn't let me put stuff in the corner, and then it would just disappear. So I end up actually doing something a little bit different and adding in some tables and kind of intersecting them so they look like pieces of the table coming out, which I think would be really nice. And I do end up putting a mirror on the wall, and we're just going to go with the fact that it is hanging from the ceiling maybe, or just attached to the window. Otherwise I don't think you'd really necessarily have a window or a mirror on a window, but that's what we're going with for this build. And then just adding a few bits of clutter here. Again, just not trying to be overly cluttered, but since there was also not really room for me to put a hand towel, I put a towel on. Well, it's technically, I think, maybe a blanket. Maybe it's a towel. Anyways, putting that towel on there on the table. And again, I try to keep some of the clutter to a minimum because I was having some issues with move objects. Again, it may just be this lot because it was so large, it had so many objects that the game said, no, I don't want to deal with that. And so here in this, I was about to say office space. This is not an office. This is a closet. I ended up doing the two tall mirrors on top of each other, just keeping it really grand. And again, trying to keep it not cluttered, but I thought those pieces worked really well from Get Famous. And so all the shoes are over there, and then putting more shoes and clothes over on that wall. And then I think I add a rug. And I think I might add an ottoman as well, because I don't know why that just feels really fancy to have an ottoman in your closet. I don't know why. I just feel like when you see those really nice homes, they always have them. And I thought about adding some other things in there, but I ended up not. I just kind of kept it really simple. And then over here in the guest room, I noticed that I had some trees that were clipping into the walls, so I scooted those out a little bit. But again, I decided just to go with a guest room here instead of a kid's room, but you can of course just change that out if you'd like to. And so I found this really cute blue wallpaper and decided to go with that. That was the statement piece for this room, and so the rest of everything in the room is a little more calm and not quite as loud as that wallpaper. So the rest of it is a little more muted in color, and I think that worked out really well, and actually is a really nice guest room with a really nice sized bathroom as well. And it was interesting that one of the whole walls in that bathroom was mirrors. That definitely like added to me trying to figure out how I wanted to set that up. I think I end up only using a shower in that bathroom. I don't think I end up using like a bathtub, so that I have room for everything in there, especially with the sink and all. And just adding in a nice dresser here, and then I end up putting a nice seating area as well in that corner, so like your guests could be all cozy in the corner and hanging out and reading or doing it, whatever it is that, you know, they want to do. And then again, keeping the clutter to a minimum, so just adding a few things there and trying to keep in mind, maybe since this is like a guest room, that you just have maybe some magazines for them and like maybe some complimentary like lotions and things like that for them. Again, very nice and very hospitable owner of this home. And I just ended up reusing that tile in here as well because I really liked the way it looked. And then it was interesting trying to find a shower because I wanted it to be like a nice glass shower and that you could like see through. I didn't want it to, I didn't want big walls on it because I didn't want that to take away from that space. And that's why the shower ended up being this way. I was going to turn it around, but none of the showers really worked that way, which is why it ended up looking that way. And so here again, not paying attention to the fact that there was a 4th floor. We were on the 3rd floor. And I ended up making this like this really cool like wellness workout area. So we have some workout equipment. I have those like spa chairs in here as well. And again, keeping it really simple and not too cluttered. And I ended up putting a boombox in here because I figured you might want music while you're working out and then just like come here and meditate, get pampered. And then I just put some shelving over in the corner, which is where I actually move the boombox over there. And then just adding like a towel over there and not too much. I put headphones over there. That's what that little thing is. And I can't remember if I actually keep that object or not. I remember going back and forth about it. And so I guess we'll find out whether I kept it or not. And then I ended up putting some trophies up there. Like maybe they played some sort of sports in high school, or maybe that's also why they're famous. I mean, who knows? But I thought that would be where you would keep those. And this was going to be the butler's suite. That was the plan. So I decorated as such. So we have a bed, a nice living room, and all of that. And then I figure out that there's actually a 4th floor. So that kind of changed my plan up a little bit because I did feel a little bit bad that this room doesn't have any windows. Like I felt bad putting the butler up here. So the floor above this actually has windows and is like a very tall room. So I actually end up moving all of the furniture for this space up 1 floor. So that's where the butler will end up living. And this floor ends up becoming a bathroom. Again, I'm thinking like for the butler, so they have their own like space. And then I also end up putting in like a storage room here. I figure maybe that's where they keep like holiday decorations, just extra things. I mean, I figure the house being this large, like you're gonna have extra stuff. So I do make that like a storage space. And again, because the owner of this home just loves the color blue, even the butler suite is blue. But I actually really like the way it came out. It's really nice and clean and like soft. And to me, it's really welcoming. But I do end up bumping everything upstairs. I kid you not, I was literally finishing this and I was like, I'm finally done with this house. Like, I'm going to be done with this recording. I can, get it out, do screenshots. And then literally, I like to do a check to make sure I did decorate every space, especially in a larger build. And that's when I realized there was another floor. I literally called my mom and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a 4th floor. Because especially these bigger builds, I like to think about it before I start building to cut down on some of the chaos in this speed build. And like neither of us paid attention to the fact that there was a 4th floor. Like I literally just couldn't believe it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I guess I need to actually add some more ladders in here because there's definitely not space for stairs here. And so you can see I'm just kind of grabbing everything and moving it upstairs. But I think it was really nice actually adding in all of those windows, and the space worked out really nicely. I did end up moving the clothes that were hanging on the wall to another wall, since it just felt weird putting that on a window. So I do shift those around a little bit, and we do lose those curtains because then I put up like the large curtains because I kind of use those everywhere. Again, thinking they're like these nice automatic curtains. So I pop those over to the side, thinking that's where they hang up their clothes. But I figured, you know, putting in a guitar in here, like maybe they like a guitar, like playing guitar and then having like their own desk space. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe they're studying for something and maybe they just like learning. I don't know. I just figured it'd be really nice for them to have really their own nice space to exist in, since they are living in someone else's home. And you can see here, I'm trying to figure out exactly where I want to put this bathroom, but I figured if you do it to where the only person they can get up here is the butler, so then they have their own bathroom, they can get to like the home storage. I figured if you had a butler, maybe they'd be the one to access that anyways, and then they can go up to like their suite at the top and have their own nice space. And then I end up actually in this storage space, I put like a Christmas tree that's like decorated. I'm thinking that's where they put it, and then like bring it downstairs, and just some other boxes. And I ended up putting like some movie posters on the wall as well, thinking maybe that's just where they store them because they actually did a lot of that kind of thing. And then I just can't believe I forgot that there was another floor. Like, that just is still mind-blowing to me. So here I'm just adding in a bunch of little pieces that I felt like, you know, you might throw up into your storage in your house. And I can't believe I just said like throw up, but put up in your in your storage for your home. And then the last space that I'm actually going to end up working on is that really cool like production studio space. Like I said, I ended up putting like the video table in there and some photography equipment, musical equipment, and like it just is a really cool space. Like if you're going to produce content or something, I feel like that'd be a really cool place to do it. Lots of windows, lots of natural light, and which, you know, for photography may or may not be a good thing. I guess like natural light is good, but there's a lot of it up there. And I also threw in like this random rug, like they just had this extra spare here and they just put it up there because they didn't want to get rid of it, but just a bunch of like random clutter just felt appropriate there. And so this is actually the final space for this home, and ended up being, I think, a really neat space. And I ended up putting, I think, like a clothing rack up there too, like maybe changing outfits, styling, and I ended up putting like that stylish chair up here as well, because I figured, you know, you might be doing your hair and makeup and things like that, or that of other people if you're a photographer. So, you know, however you want to play. But I did end up making that like a green wall, like a green screen, like if they were doing recordings. I just thought that was like really cute. And then just adding in a few pieces of clutter, some equipment and things like that, and then that's gonna kind of be it for this space. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And of course, as always, leave any comments down below of things you want to see or suggestions, anything like that. Always welcome. I would love to read through those. But I hope you have a really sweet day. Bye, everybody.